Today we take you back to the early days of Trumbull County, Ohio, where a bold experiment in communal living took root. The Trumbull Phalanx, an attempt at creating a utopian society, promised equality and cooperation, but faced challenges that ultimately led to its dissolution. Today we delve into this intriguing piece of history in this segment of What's in a Name.
What's in a Name is sponsored by the Cafaro Company.
In the early summer of 1848, Angelique Lepetite Martin opened a letter from a friend. It discussed the system of the Trumbull Phalanx Corporation, a communal experiment born out of utopian ideals. Driven by the teachings of Charles Fourier, Angelique Martin and her husband Giles joined the experiment in northwestern Braceville Township, leaving behind her life near Marietta for the promise of a new community. By the mid-1840s, Fourier communities, known as phalanxes, derived from the French term phalanstère, a communal building, began to appear throughout the United States. It's estimated that 40 Fourier communities were established across the country, 4 of which were in Ohio. The Trumbull Phalanx, organized by Fourierists based in Pittsburgh, arranged for the purchase of approximately 1,500 acres that hugged Eagle Creek in Braceville, where in 1811 Eli Barnum established a grist mill. This postcard shows Barnum's house on the corner of what is now 534 and Nelson Mosier Road. Executive Director of the Trumbull County Historical Society, Megan Reed, says Ohio was an attractive place for liberal-minded people such as the Fourierists.
In the research that I was doing on the phalanx, something really interesting came up in a book that was written on Braceville years ago, that they said that this location in Trumbull County was selected because people in this area generally were more open to isms and ologies.
In the first few years, the community seemed to thrive. Labor was divided into groups, much of it dedicated to agriculture or working at the community's mills.
I think it's easy to think of the communes as sort of agricultural, and in many ways they were. Of course, a lot of the work and labor that was happening in the communes was agricultural and farming, but they had whole communities and villages set up of schools. There was a board of education that was appointed that oversaw a lot of the school system. Education, of course, was free because that was just a very strong tenet of the Fourieristic communes that were starting in the United States at the time.
But soon the community, peaking at over 35 families, struggled with financial woes, disagreements, and the challenges of communal living, eventually dissolving by December 1847. Many of the buildings were torn down. Barnum's grist mill survived until 1963 when it was destroyed by fire. The community is now dotted with residential homes, and just a few may date to the mid-19th century.
That idea of having your own land, creating your own neighborhoods, there's like a freedom and an individuality in that, right? That the people that were starting the phalanxes throughout the country, I think would really gravitate to. The idea of having your own space to grow your own ideals and form your own governments, essentially, sort of mini governments within the United States. And that is certainly what the people that were buying into the communes and being part of the communes were doing.
Today there's little evidence such a community existed, but its name has persevered. 2 small green road signs with the name Phalanx Mills along 534 in Braceville, as well as this concrete slab, part of the old mill and dam, are the only reminders of this experiment in social cooperation. You can find more stories behind some of the region's most curious names by clicking What's in a Name under the Online Exclusives tab at businessjournaldaily.com.
What's in a Name is sponsored by the Cafaro Company.